Welcome to the first episode of the Mentality Podcast. This podcast will be a space for men to grow mentally, physically, financially, and relationally.
And in case you're wondering, why did we choose the name Mentality? We want to have a balance of mindset and masculinity, put those both together.
A short intro about ourselves. My name's Alan. I'm an HR leader, executive coach, and former athlete. I competed in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, and currently an active men's physique competitor.
Who was coached by me as well. So a little bit about me. My name is Kodi. I'm the owner of Team DYEL Fitness. I am an online fitness coach. I do nutrition, diet, training, all that. I have 1,700 plus transformations over the past 10 years. Now, at the same time, I'm also managing an autoimmune disease at the same time. So living life on hard mode. All right. So why we created the show, we wanted to cut through the BS of all the extreme online advice that you're getting from numerous different people.
And another thing we want to do different is we want to promise to be real to our listeners and have genuine, grounded conversations. No fluff, no fake talk, no fake personalities, just really speaking from our experience and what we've seen in our lives and what we've seen work and what doesn't work.
Yes, we don't want to have a bunch of extreme views. We don't need the red pill, black pill. We don't need any of that. It's going to be a little bit more level-headed.
So I just want to go into a little bit more detail about myself, my background, and what makes me qualified to give the opinions I'll be giving on this podcast is I have masters in behavioral psychology, human resources, operations, supply chain management. I've been working in corporate HR in the tech world for over 15 years. I've been coaching high performers for over 10 years. And like I said earlier, I have a athletic background in multiple sports. And with all these experiences I've seen a lot of high level executive performers, whether it was VPs, CEOs, high level salespeople. I've seen all these people chasing success without self-awareness, and I've seen them burn out.
Yeah, that's some great points right there. Absolutely. Well, leading into a little bit more about me. So I came from the fitness world. I've been in the fitness world my whole life, went from playing baseball to getting into bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding, getting injured from bodybuilding is sticking to mostly strictly coaching, right? So I'm in the fitness world. Now, fun fact, I was also a nightclub promoter for about 6 years in downtown San Francisco. So I saw the craziest things at the clubs versus seeing bodybuilders, fitness enthusiasts getting burned out. And sometimes they intertwine with each other, but it was a lot. I got to see both sides of the extremes. Now, I also have what is called massive activation syndrome. It's an autoimmune disease. So I've learned how to deal with the mental toughness and be resilient no matter what the world throws me, because it is something hard that most people never have to understand, but we're working through it. Absolutely.
And Kodi and I have been talking for a long time about starting this podcast because we've had a common goal in mind. We want to help men find balance, build a strong body, sharp mind, and be able to calm and control their emotions.
Yes. And we're not preaching perfection. We're not preaching you have to do this, you have to do this to be the most perfect individual. That's not what it's about. It's about betting yourself. We're sharing what has worked for us, what has not worked for us, and just helping you guys learn from our mistakes and what has been the key factors, what made us successful and what we got to today. So our podcast can be broken up into different pillars. So it's going to allow us to break down the framework and decide like what's going to have the future episodes and what they're going to be consisting of and what are they all going to be revolving around. So here's going to be the main pillars to start with. We're going to have a handful of them. So the first one's going to be physical health. The foundation is going to be between fitness, sleep, nutrition, anything that's going to be your body, your health. Also going to be consisting of discipline of your body. Now, the hardware, the energy, the health, the foundational strength, all that's going to be connected into our physical health.
And pillar number 2 is mental health, which is made out of self-awareness, emotional control, purpose, and habits. Mental health is very important as it's going to help you in handling stress and building a resilient mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Leading into the next pillar, we have financial health. Now, we all know money's not everything, but money can definitely be helpful. So when you have money, you have the stability, you have more freedom. Money, discipline could also be something that a lot of people don't have, something you probably want to get. You need self-discipline mentally, physically, and with your money, right? So when it comes to freedom and options, that's what we're looking for. It's not just about being rich and having endless money. There's more to life than just that. You want to have the ability to have discipline and the freedom to do whatever you want to when you have the ability to do so.
And our fourth and final pillar is relationships, connections, communication, maturity, and boundaries, helping out how to build a better future by being a better partner, a better friend, and community member.
Absolutely. And kind of bringing everything together. This is a metaphor for this, I like to say. And it's like the legs on the chair. You can't have one weak leg and then the other ones are going to be all good. That's not how it's going to be. All four of them are important. All four of them are going to be needed to have proper balance and to be solid together.
And our topic of discussion for episode 1 of this podcast is something that Kodi and I have talked a lot about with our friends, and we've seen it a lot on social media and on YouTube. And there's actually even books written about it, and that's the masculinity crisis.
Yes, absolutely. So there's one popular question. There's many questions, but there's one that comes to mind first. And it's just, what do people mean when they say that men are lost or that masculinity is under attack? What are they referring to? What is that getting into?
That's a solid question, Kodi. I'll answer it one question at a time.
Sure.
With the first one, which is men are lost, right? To me, at least, what I see men are lost is that in recent times, society has been changing at a very fast pace. As you know, technology has advanced rapidly from the 80s, the 90s, 2000s to the modern era. And as technology has advanced and society has changed, one thing that society has focused a lot on is women and the role of women, right? With the feminist movement and the 19th Amendment. So women went from being housewives that couldn't vote, then they started being able to vote. They left the home. They started being able to work. Their roles changed. They were no longer housewives. They're adding to the economy, and now they're becoming professional athletes. And for the last 50, 60 years, the role of women has changed, but society has been helping women with those roles. In the meantime, men, their role hasn't been redefined, right? The role of men has never changed in society, but society's changing. The world around men is changing, and no one told men, hey, you need to adjust to modern times. Your role is changing. And as we can see now, women are outperforming men in many things. At the current moment, women graduate at a higher rate than men from high learning institutions. And that's my take on the theory that currently men are lost.
I don't think I have much to add to that. That was great. That's much deeper than what I thought.
Oh, to answer the second question, masculinity is under attack. Now, I'm not saying that I completely agree with this. I think in certain sectors of society, masculinity is under attack. But I think we need to be careful when we approach this subject of masculinity being under attack, because I think both sides of this argument are taking it to extremes or to grift in a way that benefits them. There is a certain level of attack on masculinity, right? There's been the current rise of the word toxic masculinity, right?
Yes.
You hear that everywhere. Oh, this is toxic masculinity. Masculinity is toxic, and this and that. And I personally don't believe that masculinity is inherently toxic. Um, I think that masculine traits uh, are definitely conducive to a better society, especially in certain times like times of war, in times where things are difficult. It's definitely very good to have masculine men around, but people are taking traits. I would say I personally don't believe in toxic masculinity. I believe in toxic people. I believe that there's toxic men and there's toxic women that exhibit toxic behaviors, but I wouldn't say that masculinity is toxic. And while they say masculinity is under attack, one point that I do agree on is that there are certain parts of society that are attacking masculinity. I'll give you a perfect example of that. I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago, Gillette dropped a commercial where they were basically telling men not to hit on women. And it was just like, at the end of the commercial, there was one guy, then there was a girl walking by, and he was going to approach her, and the guy steps in front of him and like stops him. He's like, dude. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what are you trying to say? That talking to women is wrong? Like, that's a huge blanket statement to make. Like, I think there's a proper way to approach women, and a negative way to approach women. For example, if you're at a bar and you're respectful and the person's by herself, there's a and you say it in a polite way. I don't think that's bad, right? And even nowadays, there's a lot of women that have come out, and you see it on media saying, "Hey, men don't approach us anymore, or men won't talk to us anymore." But that's because men are scared because of this message of being canceled or being called predators or creepy or things like that. Now, there's a bad way to go about things, right? If a woman's walking down the street and you start calling her from your car, or saying inappropriate things, then yeah, that's the wrong way to go about things. But we can't just generalize and say, oh, men talking to women is wrong and it's toxic masculinity.
Now, I have one follow-up question for you on that same topic. Now, do you believe that it's location-based? Let's just say, like me living in San Diego, you're living in San Francisco. Do you think it's a social media thing that's changed over the years? What do you feel like has been one of the major causes as to why it's becoming so extreme in this nature of people saying that it is a toxic trait?
I definitely think it's location based. I wouldn't say that it's as close as, like, let's say San Francisco, San Diego. I would look at it more on like a global scale,
Of
right? Like,
course.
for example, we're seeing this a lot in developed countries, like the US, Western Europe, but in other countries, right, where they're dealing with, I would say, um, much bigger issues. That this is not a thing, right? I have a lot of being big in the wrestling community. I have a lot of Russian acquaintances, Russian friends, and toxic masculinity is not really a thing in Russia.
Mm.
It's not really a thing that they discuss. Men are men, women are women, whatever that means. I'm not going to get into that on this one, but basically, toxic masculinity is not a thing. It's perfectly acceptable even expected for men to talk to women. And another place I'll give an example is Brazil. I know a lot of Brazilian people, and the women have talked to me, and they've said, like, yeah, in Brazil, it's just common when you go out, you go to bars, you go to clubs, you get used to men approaching you and talking to you. And when I moved here to the US, I was just like, oh, what's wrong with these guys? Like, are they scared? Are they intimidated? Why don't they want to talk to me? And it's because it's a different culture. Over there, it's more acceptable. Matter of fact, is it's expected for the men to come to approach you, right? Women expect that. Women go out because they want to get talked to. And I'm not saying 100% of the women, once again, want this. I'm speaking in a general statement. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rules and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a cultural thing, and it's definitely location based, but not on a smaller level, like city by city. I mean, I guess, obviously, like, let's say something like San Francisco compared to like some city in like
The South.
Wyoming,
Yeah,
right?
somewhere in the South.
Wyoming or Alabama or something, yeah, would be different. But I think we see the big differences in like Western countries compared to like non-Western countries.
One thing I want to lead into, especially like younger demographic, let's say dating in the 18 to 25-year-old demographic, or just under 30. Social media is such a big thing that we didn't have when we were younger in terms of being such a massive part. On a pretty daily basis, I will see guys document the dates with a woman. I will see women document their dates with a guy. And it's like, if something goes bad, it's going to be all over social media. It's all over everywhere. So some people are intimidated to even go approach a man, approach a woman, because they're going to get blasted on TikTok a couple hours later. They're going to get made fun of. So how do you build the confidence to go talk to someone when you know there's like a 30% chance that you're going to end up online and people are going to make fun of you all across the world? That has to be intimidating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But from your point of view, Kodi, would you say that in your experience, would you say, with what you've seen and what your clients experience, because I know
Of
you
course.
coach people from across the U.S., a lot of different countries. In your experience, would you say masculinity is under attack?
It's hard to say. I would say that my team is 75% men, 25% women. So I have a little bit of a different demographic of what I see on a daily basis. But I would say that, yeah, there are some instances that male clients are scared to death to talk to women. They're scared to death to talk online about anything because they don't want to get canceled revolving around women. Even when they go on a date, and let's say the girl asks them out, they're very much unsure of who's supposed to pay for it. There's just so many little instances that there's even times they'll text me. I've had clients text me at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, which I'm not going to respond to them because it's my day off. But they're like, hey, Kodi, I did this and this. What do you think I should do? I'm like, bro, I'm not your life coach. I'm your bodybuilding coach. I don't really know what you do with women in your free time, but they're scared to death of so many different variables. But in terms of just a very blunt answer of yes or no, I guess I don't have a million different examples of is their masculinity under attack. It's just that they feel uneasy approaching women. They feel uneasy reaching out to women sometimes. That would be the best way I'd say that I see on a daily basis. And that's from 18 to like 60. These are not like all teenagers. It's all over the place.
And I would like to add a certain caveat that while I do think to a certain extent masculinity is under attack here in the US, I would say that it's only masculinity exhibited by men, because men and women aren't like 100% black and white. Men have masculine and feminine traits, and women have feminine and masculine traits. And it really, the percentage of what trait depends individually on the person. But masculinity is strictly only toxic when a man exhibits masculinity, right? Because when a woman, for the most part, exhibits masculine behavior, currently in society, it's being praised, right? The boss babe, right? When a woman in corporate America is very direct and has leadership qualities and stern, she's praised for that, and as she should be, right? These are qualities that as a leader you should have. There are certain masculine traits that leaders need to have, whether they're male or female. But when it's a female exhibiting these traits, they're praised, as they should be. But when it's a man exhibiting these traits, oftentimes it's considered toxic. So that's a double standard I have seen when it comes to exhibiting masculine traits.
Would you say that that's mostly in your workforce versus like me being in the bodybuilding world? I guess it's just sometimes it is black and white. Everybody kind of acts the same. They call girls tomboys, they call girls who are on steroids this and that. But for the most part, everybody just has too many different personalities. In your work life, is it just this person's supposed to act like this person's supposed to act like this regardless of their gender? What does that come down to?
Yeah, I definitely think that depending on the field you work in, really affects that. Things just like we said, in the country is different. Different fields have different ways of thinking. I would say that in the more still old school traditional fields like construction, let's say the auto dealerships, things like that, it's still very much acceptable for men to have masculine qualities, and um, and sometimes women that do exhibit masculine qualities when they try to be leaders, it's frowned upon. And I think it's quite the opposite in like the tech world, where it's men that are too masculine are penalized, while women that are masculine um, are praised for it. So I do think, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like in certain fields of work, women aren't penalized for being masculine. Like I said, in the more traditional ones, like things like the auto industry and construction and things like that, the women are for the most part expected to be more traditionally feminine. But yeah, definitely it depends in the field you're working in.
Great. No, I agree with all that. We covered a lot of it. Let's dive into the next topic.
A question I have for you, Kodi, relating to the masculinity crisis
Of course.
is, would you like to elaborate, in your experience, what's wrong with the extremes? Like I said earlier, I think this masculinity crisis is being used a lot by grifters on both sides of the aisle, on both extremes, to benefit themselves. And what would you say is wrong with the extremes of hyperaggression versus passive victimhood?
So I'm just going to break it down to two because, like I said, I've worked with over 1,700 people, and there's been a lot that I didn't work with. We've had phone calls, and I could tell you it's split down the middle. It's people that are just super, I guess you could say almost crazy, super OCD. They're workhorses. They're doing whatever it takes. Unfortunately, that is my personality as well. So I understand, I could relate to them. I will work every hour of every moment. If it gets me to where I need to be, it's not healthy, it's not sustainable. And I definitely get burned out quite often. And that's something that I see with them too. And this is not always just bodybuilding based. This could be with your normal job. There's projects that me and Al have worked on behind the scenes that we're working hours on it numerous times a day. And there are times we get burned out because we have to work into the weekend, but that's sometimes what it takes to get to where you want to be. Now, on the flip side, I have met a lot of people that do play the victim card. It is a very big pet peeve of mine from a client and coach standpoint, is that I will tell them, hey, let's go get this done. And like, I just had a bad day. I'm not feeling it. Or like, I had a flat tire. I'm not doing cardio this week, and I'm just going to go have a cheat meal. It's like, man, like bad things happen to people all the time. You can't let that get to you, or they'll start blaming other people for their actions. It's never their fault. No matter what happens, it's everybody else's fault but theirs. And that's just not the way you want to live. It starts affecting your views and your mindset. And before you know it, it could go downhill. So going on either one of those extremes could be absolutely terrible. People that are too locked in and they never calm down and like give themselves a break, and people that they just don't try or they give up very easy. And just kind of the last thing I want to do, I wasn't always like this. I think when I got my autoimmune disease and I kind of had to keep my mind occupied, otherwise I would think about what my illness is doing to me. I use work to cope. I use work to do that. And that's for a lot of people. It may not be for an illness, but they're coping from something, whether it's they are trying to get some time away from their wife or their husband, or they're trying to get time away from their job. They're doing something to keep their mind occupied. And instead of being calm and maybe playing some video games, they're out here working 12, 16 hours a day. And that's also very extreme, but either you have that option or you have someone that's going to go sit at home and cry and do nothing. So both of those extremes are terrible. I would not do either one of them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that as men, it behooves us to live a more balanced life, right? I don't think extremes in any aspect of life are good for us as men, in any aspect of life. I think that life is best when we're in the, and I'm not saying exactly the middle ground, but not dealing in black and white. We should operate in the gray. To quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, only the Siths deal in absolutes. So,
There we go.
yeah, I mean, hyperaggression is bad, right? I think a lot of people, or I've seen that a lot of people, because of this masculinity crisis, it affects them in a way that they see society, having negativity towards masculinity, and they go to the extreme of hyperaggression. They're like, well, if society doesn't want me to be masculine and they're telling me being masculine is toxic, I'm going to crank that up to like 100, right? And so they're super masculine, super alpha, super aggro, and that's going to burn you out, right? That's if you don't have balance on your life. Like I do understand, being upset with things and how they are, but being a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian is not good. And then going to the extreme just because your opposition is on the other extreme is also not good. You're only damaging yourself. And you don't have to fight fire with fire. You can be a reasonable person and just operate in the middle and not go to the extreme of hyperaggression, because that usually leads to burnout and to just destroying your life, destroying relationships. But I also don't agree with the extreme of passive victimhood. Like you said, a lot of people are always blaming society for the situations that they're in, right? Like, oh, it's never their fault. It's always the environment, the way they were raised, their parents, and there's a lack of accountability. In men, I think that a lot of men currently have a lack of accountability, and they project that onto women a lot. There's a lot of men always like, oh, women aren't accountable, women are accountable. It's like, don't worry about women, worry about yourself. Because as men, I've seen a lot of lack of accountability. And being a victim is not going to help you get anywhere. There comes a point where if you keep blaming everything on society and nothing is your fault, then you have no way of improving, because your whole world is affected, in your worth and your ability to do things by the world around you. Where as a man, we should have an internal compass not an external compass. When you start believing that your life is in your hands and that you're responsible for your future, for the situation you're in, then you start being able to change things. Because if you just believe that your whole life is shaped by society and what's outside, you're not going to be able to change things. You're not going to be able to change society. Okay, you're not, you, most people, and this podcast is for the average man, for the majority of men, most of us do not have the power. We're not president, we're not governor. We're not going to have the ability to change society to fit us in a way that we think is going to help us be successful, which is why you need to have an internal compass. You need to fix yourself to be able to be successful in life. You need to find what is stopping you from being successful and then changing that mindset, regardless of what's going on in society, regardless of what's going on outside. You are responsible for your life and you need to take control of your life.
I have nothing else to add to that. Sounds great. And I definitely agree with that 100%. Now, with everything you covered and all these different variables and men just not knowing exactly who to listen to, now, do you think that's why they feel so confused? They feel angry. They don't know who to follow. What do you think is the reason as to why they might feel this way? They just don't feel a sense of happiness that they belong in a particular group.
Yeah, I mean, I think masculinity crisis is definitely the perfect term for what is going on right now. Um, when we as humans, when we're confused and we don't have purpose and we don't know what to do with ourselves, it that confusion eventually leads to anger and it leads to people lashing out. And that's why, so many young men these days are angry and confused. It's like I said earlier, we never redefined the role of men as society changed. We were very focused as society at empowering women and redefining the role of women, which is perfectly okay. I'm not saying that's wrong. I think that's good. I think as society, as humans, as we evolve, the role of humans should evolve as well. But young men were left behind in this process, and we stopped caring as a society about the role of young men and providing them adequate leadership, and telling them exactly what it means to be a man. Um, I would say we've lost a lot of the transition from young boys to men, and that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. Certain traditional things that we used to have, right? Like back in the day, there used to be certain traditions in different societies when men reach a certain age that they would go through to transition to being a man, and we really don't have that anymore. We don't have a passage that lets men know, hey, you're not a boy anymore, you're a man. There, in earlier in the 19th century, when boys graduated high school and they moved out of their homes to go to college, right? That was a passage, right? You were leaving your parents' house, you were going to live at the university and live on your own and take care of yourself, and you're responsible for yourself. Um, and nowadays, with how the economy is, um, I think it somewhere, I believe that like people are living at home on average up till they're 28, 29, something like that. So that transition from boyhood to manhood has been erased, right? So that you're still in college, but now you're living at home with your parents still, because you can't afford to live in the dorms or have your own apartment without incurring this huge financial debt from taking student loans. Um, Another thing is also back in the day, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, homes were much cheaper. So men were being able to buy homes at a younger age and once again, live on their own, off their wages, and be an independent man. And I don't know if you've seen home prices lately. Well, I know you have because you recently bought a house, but
I
it's
can
it's
confirm.
ridiculous, right? Your
It
house
is.
was extremely expensive, and the average 20-something-year-old graduating from college cannot afford to buy a home. So now you graduated college, right? You're supposed to be a man now. You have your degree, you have your bachelor's, you have your master's, and now you're forced to, let's say you did move to the dorms and you took on the student loan, and now you graduated, and now you're forced to move back home with your parents, and you have this huge debt. That's not going to make you feel like a man, right? Now you're dependent on your parents again. You're living at home, and you owe tens of thousands, if you're lucky, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not going to feel like a man.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that before we move on, just because I graduated in grad school 2018, undergrad 2017. And once I graduate kinesiology, it's a pretty well-known fact. You're not going to get too far in undergrad with kinesiology. You have to get a master's or PhD to make any money. So I graduated about $70,000 in debt. So just looking at my account saying I owe $70,000, I got like a 3 to 4 year period before they gave me the interest on it, but I still owed over $60,000, $70,000. And I had no choice but to move home. I had no money. I was working as a personal trainer at Crunch and working at least 6 to 8 hours a day to the best of my ability. I was probably pulling in like 50K a year if I was lucky, maybe 60. So having to help my family with money, having to buy my own food, having to pay for my bodybuilding career, I had no money left. I would genuinely say that I was frustrated. I was like, man, I'm 23, 24. How do I move on my own? How do I level up? And like, it's impossible. Now I know that we live in Northern California, so prices here is much different than somewhere else. But the facts don't change that the price of college is still expensive in every state, no matter where you go. But I could confirm, man, I wouldn't say I was angry, but I felt lost. I had nothing to look forward to. I was like, how am I going to pay off the $60,000? And luckily we pulled it through. We pulled it through.
And not to go on too much of a tangent here, but I think in the future, a good subject to touch on is how to graduate college, possibly debt-free. It's something that I'm very proud of that helped me in my life was when I went to grad school to get all 3 of my masters. Thankfully, I was able to find a job while I was working that was paying around 50% of my tuition. And then the other 50%, I was able to pay for it. Now, was it easy? No, I was working 65 to 70 hours a week, plus doing 3 master's degrees at once. So I developed really bad insomnia, which I still have to this day, because I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night and just functioning like that for a couple of years until I graduated. Was it worth it? Absolutely. It felt great to graduate with my master's and be able to say I don't owe any money. I was debt free. But I definitely had to go to an extreme to do that. Like I said, I was lucky enough to find a job that was willing to pay for 50% of my tuition. And then I was putting in crazy hours. And I had a really good salary too at the time. I was pretty high level at the company. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that later on we can touch on how, helping people go to college and seeing avenues to be able to graduate debt free. Now, also keep in mind, I did not go to Stanford or Harvard or someone where I was paying $65,000 a year in tuition.
True.
So that helped out a lot.
One follow-up to that, just because we went to the same college. We went to Cal State East Bay in Hayward, California. But when I went to grad school, I went to Cal Baptist University. Now, for that, Alan did something very extreme. I also did something extreme I haven't talked too much about. My program was like a 18th month program, so a little over like a year, a year and a half or so. And I told them I want to do it 1 year. So I did a 16 to 18 month program in 13 months, 12 and a half months flat. And I just doubled up, and they gave it to me for a pretty cheap price because it went by the year, not by the amount of units, which was odd to me. But I took a almost 2 year program in 1 year, barely slept, barely had any time for friends. I worked every day for 13 months straight to get my master's degree, but I had no money. I didn't want to get more debt on top of my debt I have from undergrad. So yes, I wish I would have had some tips and tricks on how to save money. Would have probably helped me out in the long run.
Okay, Kodi. And my final question for this subject is, how can men find purpose without going to extremes?
Now, I'm not going to lie. I would probably be one of the worst people to ask these questions because I am an adrenaline junkie. I'm a workhorse. I love doing things to extremes. It's just something that works for me, but I have a lot of time on my hands. So first off, I would say don't do what I do because it's not sustainable for most people. They can't and probably wouldn't want to do what I do. So trying to find a job or college or whatever you're doing, try and find time to take breaks, try and find things that you could do that's going to help you be sustainable, something that works for me and works for a lot of, whether it's content creators or people that have normal jobs or whatever they do on the side. They work a certain amount of days. You have to have 1 or 2 days a week where you do nothing, or you do something that decompresses you. If you just work every single day, 7 days a week, whether it's school, whether it's work, whatever it is, you're going to burn yourself out. There's been times I'm like, it's not about the money anymore. I just do not want to work for the next week because I burned myself out. I wish that I would have had a slower pace. I wish I would have given myself more breaks, had designated schedules where I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on this on Monday, going to take Tuesday off, going to work on this, or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be that specific, but I wish that more people would be okay with giving themselves some time off or giving themselves just some leeway. You don't have to always be balls to the wall with every single thing you do. It's not sustainable, and you're going to go downhill very quickly.
No, I agree with you. I think social media has really pushed people to extremes, right? That's what gets clicks. That's what gets likes. You see these reels on TikTok and Instagram. And I think one of the original things that started this was hustle culture, right? I watch podcasts on double the speed while I'm meditating on my way to work, grabbing my coffee, like you've seen
Yes.
those ridiculous things, right? I wake up at 4 a.m. and hit the gym barefooted, just ridiculous stuff that like you don't need to do to be successful, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that is total BS that people aren't even doing, but they're putting it out there to create this view and this image of themselves that they can sell you. Now, you need to stop believing everything that you see on social media. Most of it is BS. Most people don't live that type of life that they talk about.
Yes.
And the people that preach extremes usually do that because they want to sell you something. They're selling you a course, they're selling you a program. They're trying to show this image of themselves, this crazy hyper successful image, but they had to just hustle so hard to sell you something. And you need to realize that you need to start rejecting these extremes and find a center when it comes to every aspect of life. Find your center, right? Not everyone's center is going to be the same, but find a good middle ground for yourself. And I say this as someone that has gone to the extremes before. And I'm not saying there's not times that you don't need to go to extremes, right? I'm just saying overall, for the majority of the time, you can't constantly operate at an extreme. There's short periods in times where you do need to go to the extreme. Giving an example was when I used to wrestle and I had to train for a tournament, right? I had to train for a tournament and I had to peak correctly. Practices got more extreme. I was going to train harder. I was cutting weight harder. Or for bodybuilding, right? You have a 16-week prep, 20-week prep. It starts off not that bad. Last 4 weeks gets really bad, right? But I'm not operating those 4 weeks. I'm not operating on those 4 weeks for 12 months.
No.
It'd be impossible. I'd be dead. I'd die, right? It's just not possible. And same thing like that. You can't always operate in extremes your whole life. Like when I was in grad school and I was working 65 to 70 hours a week while doing all 3 of my masters. That was only 2 years. I didn't do that for 5-10 years. It would have been physically, it's just not feasible. I would be completely miserable as a person. And same thing when I started my career, I worked a lot harder, a lot longer hours. And as I progressed up the corporate ladder, um, things got different. I was able to find a more balanced way of living my life. And I was able to, while my job was more mentally demanding, I got really, really good at being able to do my job more efficiently. And I think that's the key, right? Is being grounded is harder than being extreme for multiple reasons. I think one, because society preaches being extreme, and you don't see people out here telling you like, hey, just be chill, not too chill, but not too extreme. Be in the middle, find balance in your life. But also because it doesn't sound good, right? It doesn't look as exciting when you tell people that, right? Like you're not going to go on like make a TikTok reel and like, yeah, so I wake up at 8 a.m. I kind of chill, eat my breakfast slowly, like living a normal chill life. It doesn't sound very exciting. When you're out, I remember seeing this. I'd have meetings when I'd go out, when we'd have reunions with a lot of different tech people, and everyone would be talking about like, oh yeah, I train this much, and then I do yoga, and I'm on sales calls since 5 a.m, and then I'm up again at midnight, and this and that, and they're just preaching this extreme lifestyle, and it's just like that. I knew a lot of these people, and that's not how they lived, right? But they just portrayed that image because it sounds cool, right? It sounds impressive, and that's
And
the image.
you know what that typically is, right, Alan? You know why people typically do that, at least from a social media standpoint. I know real life, and that's different. But I just want to add in one quick point to yours, is that as someone who's been posting on social media 5 times a week for probably the past 6 years with 5,000 plus videos, I can confirm that most people don't show their losses. You only see the wins. You only see like the glory and all the great, achievements. Or the hardcore videos, like you're saying, of what was popular a couple of months ago, where everybody was waking up at 4 a.m. and like running 10 miles, then had this crazy breakfast, then did this. The average person was never do that. And I guarantee they only did that one time, realized that it's going to boost the algorithm. People love it. And they just kept doing it over again. They don't really live like that. I know a lot of influencers in real life, and they have quite a boring life. They don't do anything fancy unless it's time for shooting content. But back to what you were saying, just wanted to say that real life and social media are not the same thing, not even slightly. So don't compare yourself.
That's exactly what I was going to end with, and you're 100% right on that. Is people need to realize that social media is not real life, and what you're seeing before, when Instagram first started, there was a saying like, "Oh, what you see on Instagram is a highlight reel of people's lives," but it's evolved past that. Now, what you see in social media is not even a lot of times a highlight of people's life. It's fake. It's a fake highlight of people's life. Before, at least, it was like, these are the best parts of my life that you're seeing, right? Now, a lot of times it's like, these are the best parts of my life that you're seeing, but none of this is real. I just did this all for social media.
Yeah. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got into the fitness industry and got into content. And I had somebody out here who he sells a lot of courses on how to be a coach. It's not fitness really. He just teaches how to be coaching of other programs, but he asked to borrow my Lambo. He's like, "Hey, can I borrow your car?" And I was like, "For what?" Like, for a car show? He was like, "Oh no, I'm going to go shoot content." It's like, "So you're going to shoot content for your course on how to be a successful entrepreneur using my car?" But that doesn't make any sense. Like, you said you're wealthy. He's like, "Oh no, those aren't my cars. Those are my buddies from college or buddies from whatever." I was like, "Okay, this is real. This is real fake." All right. So as we start getting towards the end of this episode, I want to talk about a couple of key things. So there's 3 takeaways I don't want to go over. So with the first one being audit yourself. So what does that mean exactly? It's referring to, of the pillars that we touched on that we broke down for you guys, which one are you the weakest in right now? You don't have to lie to yourself. Be honest. That's the best thing. Honesty is key. Take a couple minutes and ask, what am I weakest at now? What can I work on? What is the most meaningful to me? Is it your mental health? Is it your physical health? Is it for your financial stability? Is it your relationship, whether it's your girlfriend, boyfriend, family? Doesn't matter what it is. Write those down and address how you're going to work on that.
And another thing that you can do is set one non-negotiable. So pick one small, consistent action this week. Pick something that doesn't have to be big. Matter of fact, the smaller the better, but be consistent on it. So maybe it's telling yourself and making a commitment to train 3 times per week, or tracking your expenses, or meditating for 10 minutes. Just pick using the audit of what pillar you're the weakest on, and pick the non-negotiable for that pillar. A small one, and stay consistent with it.
Yeah, sorry about that. Didn't mean to talk over you. But I was going to add one quick thing just to what you were just saying. But I was going to say, even from my standpoint, if I coach people, no matter what level, no matter what age is, I give them very small goals too as well. I've noticed that in my beginning years, I would give them something super extreme and they would flop. They would be very intimidated, or it'd be too hard for them. They couldn't handle it. So no matter what it is, I like to start small. And that applies to all aspects of your life. You never have to go from 0 to 100. You never have to have this 10-year long goal. Start with something small and work your way up. That's all I want to say.
No, absolutely.
And then getting into the last topic here. So we have the unfollow the chaos. So what is it referring to? It's referring to protect your mindset by curating what you consume. Now, Alan, if you had to break that down, how would you go over that in your own words?
Yeah. So unfollow chaos is kind of like cleaning your mental diet. As a coach, as you know, when we did our first show, I had come back from an injury. I was obese, and I had to get back into shape to compete. So one of the first things we did was clean up my physical diet, which meant no more in and out, no more, you know, burgers, hot dogs, pizza. Had to clean up my diet, and cleaning up my diet made me healthier physically. Same thing, you have to clean up your mental diet. That means look at your algorithm, look at what's you're seeing on your For You page on IG and TikTok. And if what you're seeing isn't conducive to good mental health, if it's just pumping you with negative image, is whether it's, once again, hustle culture stuff, extreme things, news that's trying to make you angry, political things, um, OF type content that is going to lead you into unnecessary lust. Yeah, just cleanse all that from your algorithm, and you'll start feeling healthier mentally.
Leading up to that, yeah, guys, stop gooning. That's what we do not need. You don't have to base your entire personality off that. But like I said, my team is 75% men. And what I have seen is that once we kind of take away the negativity in their life, and this is typical social media. That's why sometimes I'll have my competitors get off social media a couple of weeks out in the show, because they get in their own head, whether it is something political, which is something right now very popular, or they are following a bunch of thirst traps, or they're following a bunch of food pages, talk about how they need to go out this food challenge. It doesn't matter what it is. All our triggers are different, but sometimes you need to get rid of those things and calm yourself down. There has to be something positive you could be following to keep your mind right. So as we're getting to the end of this episode, I want to talk a little bit about what you should be looking forward to in the next episode. It's going to be financial health, financial grifting. And there's been a lot of talk in the social media world now about people who are willing to take loans out to buy courses. People are willing to pay other people for their knowledge, and they're getting absolutely ripped off. So we definitely need to give a deep dive into what is worth spending money on and what is not. And certain things should be common sense, but we'll break that down when we get there.
And if you like today's episode, hit the like button, subscribe to Mentality, turn on the notifications, leave a comment on what topics you would like us to cover next, and share it with a friend that's ready to level up.
Absolutely. And just kind of finishing up everything, want to finish up with one simple line. And it's just, remember, real strength isn't your ego. It's awareness, discipline, and consistency.
Stay grounded, stay disciplined, and keep building your mentality.